Preface and Introduction to the Letters of a Portuguese Nun. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Letters of a Portuguese Nun by Mariana Alcoforado, translated by Edgar Prestige. Preface. My attempt at an English rendering of the letters is, I think, the first, since the days of Ball's Letters from a Portuguese Nun to an Officer in the French Army, London, 1808. Footnote. An American translation was published in 1890. End of footnote. But during the 2 centuries which have elapsed since their first publication, quite a small literature has grown up around them, and they have been turned into several European tongues, the French editions alone amounting to more than 30. If the numerous so-called replies and imitations were added to this reckoning, the number would be nearly doubled, and this without taking into account the critiques and studies which have appeared about them. I do not propose here to enter into a comparison of the letters with those of Heloise, as many writers have done, but shall content myself with referring the curious to the excellent work of Sr. Cordeiro, Soror Mariana, a Freira Portuguesa, Lisbon, 1888, 2nd edition, 1891. It is from him that I have learned nearly all that I know about Mariana, and in my introduction I have made a liberal use of his book, as well as of M. Ass's preface to the edition of the Lettres Portugaises avec les Réponses, Paris, 1889, upon which I have based my rendering. If my translation should arouse any interest in things Portuguese, and lead others to read and make versions of such masterpieces of the world's literature as the Frei Luís de Souza and the Folhas Caídas of Garrett, or the poems of João de Deus, I should be more than rewarded for any trouble the present work may have cost me. But who can hope to succeed where Burton has apparently failed? The English public, and the critics too, will probably continue to believe that there is nothing worth reading in Portuguese literature with the exception of the Lusiads. Here, too, there is perhaps a lesson to be learned from the Germans, especially from such as Storck, Reinhard Stittner, and Michaelis de Vasconcelos. I should like to thank Mr. York Powell of Christ Church for the kind help which he has given me in the difficult task of translation. My aim has been throughout to keep as close to the French text as possible, seeing that the original Portuguese is lost, aided by the masterly retranslation of Sr. Cordeiro. L'Étrange's version, 5 Love Letters from a Nun to a Cavalier, London, 1678, is somewhat free at times, but it has aided me in the 3rd letter. I have followed Cordeiro in his rearrangement of the order of the letters, the 2nd and 4th changing places. The historical facts which concern the hero and heroine of these letters I have given briefly in the introduction, and a bibliography and appendix will be found at the end of the volume. The text of the first French edition of 1669 has been copied in Paris purposely for this work, and will, it is hoped, add much to its interest and value. And so I deliver poor Mariana's passionate epistles to the consideration of those who can appreciate them and feel for her. And weeping then she made her moan, the night comes on that knows no morn, when I shall cease to be alone, to live forgotten and love forlorn. Edgar Prestige, Bowdon, 1892. Introduction. Fuid los deleites, pues non da deleite perfecto, nin bueno, nin tan poco sano. A todos engaña su falso afeite, sin sentir mata el su gozo vano. A todos arriendan del bien soberano, jamás no aplacen que no den tristeza. Aforjan cadenas del sótil volcano, con que encarcelan a toda nobleza. Cancioneiro de Resende. In 1663, says Sainte-Beuve, it became the policy of Louis XIV to help Portugal against Spain, but the succour which he gave was indirect. Subsidies were secretly furnished, the levying of troops was favoured, and a crowd of volunteers hastened there. Between this small army, commanded by Schomberg, and the feeble Spanish troops which disputed the soil with it, there were each summer many marches and counter-marches.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?